Hi there. In this recording, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the best practices for using CK12 as part of your curriculum, but I also want to give you some cautions in using CK12 as part of your curriculum. So if I am using CK12, I'm going into the Explorer, and I'm just going to go to a Flexbook. And let's let's do biology today. So there's a lot of great resources in CK12 that you can use. So if I'm teaching a biology topic, this particular biology is geared towards high school. I'm going to go to molecular biology and I'm just going to pick DNA structure and replication. And I want to see what is out there for the students to use. Now, in terms of best practices, first of all, on this page, you see where it says other ways to learn. One of the nice things about CK12 is that it does give you multiple platforms besides just reading. You can have the students interact with videos and simulations. Here's a 3D simulation of what's happening during DNA replication. So that's all good. And of course, there are going to be resources on the actual reading page itself. So we are getting students to read. The reading in here is very informational. There are diagrams, and those can be enlarged. Typically, I'm clicking on this one, it's not getting bigger, but sometimes you'll see a link to actually, it'll say picture underneath, and you can actually blow the picture up. The words themselves, if I pull up nucleic acid, maybe I don't know what a nucleic acid is. So when I pull that up, it's going to take me to resources that would provide students with opportunities to interact with other materials related to that particular word. So if I think that my students don't have a good foundation for nucleic acids, as part of my instructions, I can say, when you get to the word nucleic acid, click on that word and go to the nitrogenous base video. And notice that this one is actually at 7th and 8th grade, so it'll be some kind of basic information on what nucleic acids actually are. Or I can have them engage with the practice, I can show the real world. So that's just, that's kind of hidden inside the actual text itself. So here comes one of the cautions. I feel that, first of all, these questions are extremely DOK 1. That the answers to these can be found exactly in the text, and we want to be very cautious about that. So we definitely need to supplement with some questions that are DOK2 and DOK3. In doing that, as a teacher, probably what I would do is find additional reading on DNA structure and replication and put that in my Google Classroom. If you're using the classroom in CK12, you can add external resources to that. And that I will show some of that in a different video, but you could pull things in. The video that I showed you so far is just how do you sync CK12 to your Google Classroom, and I shouldn't even say sync, it's when you assign things, you're specifically assigning to your Google Classroom and not to CK12. But if you are using the CK12 classroom, then you would want to pull those resources into that so that you have everything together. So make sure that you are providing opportunities for students to read more than just the CK12. And I'm going to do another recording later that is pointing you to some excellent resources that you can use for students in terms of finding additional informational text, especially at the high school level. There are middle school texts available, but they're in a slightly different format. But I do have some very good resources for high school textbooks that are free. So what else do I need to say about this? The science and engineering practices and the cross-cutting concepts of your standards are not emphasized on CK12. They're increasingly doing that when you get to the, if you go to the NGSS resources, they're trying to get there. My computer's got a little lag here. Here we go. So remember, I had NGSS, and I can actually pick topics that are in there. So if I go to high school physical science, for example, and I'm looking at the modern periodic table, I have a reading assignment, and then I have some other materials that go with it. But Still, the science and engineering practices and cross-cutting concepts, I don't think, even on the NGSS content, I don't think that they're emphasized well. And remember, the science and engineering practices are what is aligned to ACT Aspire, and that's the part that is the what the student should be doing. So that's my other caution, is if you're using CK12, make sure that you first look at your standard and reflect on your standard, very similar to what we did when we did unit development. Thinking about what are all the pieces that students need to be successful with that content, and are you teaching the content as the standard intended? So if you are focusing on those things first, then you can use these resources with a lot of success. You just need to make sure that you supplement those. And that's why there are very few curriculum that really can be viewed as a standalone curriculum unless someone specifically created it for your school or for your state with those standards in mind. So great stuff. I love the real world connections. I love the fact that there are multiple modalities for engaging the students. So if you have a visual learner versus a book learner, but I think that these real world connections are really important because we want to see how these things actually can how they exist in real life. And if I go to one of those real world examples, you'll notice that there are some resources at the bottom. So there's an answer key. There's some information about where those came from. Here's an Arkansas language alignment that's in there. But I can actually go to some of the areas that the information can be found. So this one took me to Study Jams. So by clicking on that link, that actually took me away from that activity and gave me this additional activity that my students can participate in. So lots of resources on CK12, but again, you have to really think about and be true to your standards to make sure that you're actually teaching those the way that they were intended to be taught.